Hey everyone, it's Andrew Nagel, and we're back with a Patreon request that I've been meaning to make for a couple of weeks now. I've just been kind of backed up with customs and some other projects, and so yeah, here we are. I honestly forget whom it was who requested it at this point, so I'm sorry that I can't do a shout out, but they wanted to see my method of they wanted to see what would be a suspension setting, but technically we can't do that with wire because a true suspension setting would have nothing underneath it, whereas in this we are going to have kind of a basket holding our stone in place. But I'm going to show you what I would do in place of a suspension setting, which is what I call the pinch and lock method, which is kind of like a suspension setting where you're pinching the edges of the cut stone between the metal and holding it in place. A suspension setting uses the suspension, well, that's why they call it a suspension, there's nothing underneath the stone, but it uses the pressure of the metal holding the stone in place between the 2 points of metal, and that's why there can be nothing underneath it, whereas in wire, especially with like rings and pendants, you're using wire components to build a sturdier surface. It's not like you're not using a single piece of metal to, build a foundation in which you set the stone in. So in fabrication methods, that's why you see a lot of suspension settings done in fabricated rings, and they look amazing. It's just not really, structurally possible with wire unless you were doing some very thick, larger gauges of wire, which maybe will be something I'll experiment with in the future. But for now, we're just going to start with this base of a ring, and as you can see here, I've created this open spot in the ring that allows the cut bottom part of the stone. I believe it's called the girdle. If I'm getting that wrong, I apologize. I'm not that versed in all the different faces of the faceted stones yet. But we're going to leave that spot open for the point of the cut stone to stick out in the bottom. And as we poke up our middle parts in the center there, you see I'm just building that to kind of make a base for what is going to be the curve that makes this pinch. It's going to make the top part of this setting. So now I'm bringing the outermost wire. I'm going to bring it around that post that I brought up, and I'm going to do that to both sides, using the outer wire kind of as a guide, and keeping that stone in place with my fingers. This is why I call it the pinch and lock method, because as you can see, that metal kind of pinches over that stone and holds it in place. And so that's kind of the basic way that you build this setting, and you can do this with any gauge of wire. And it's all about just pinching that stone in place. And I've shown this method a couple of different times, just haven't really explained it like this. Again, a true suspension setting, there would be absolutely nothing between or underneath the stone. It would just be held by pressure on the sides. And so again, maybe some thicker gauges of wire, you'd be able to actually do a true suspension setting. And that's probably something I should just experiment with and try. And so I'll order some thicker gauges of wire at some point and do that. I just can't really guarantee when because of all the different projects I've got going on. But yes, a true suspension setting, there would be just nothing underneath it. If you haven't seen them before, I would Google it, just so that way you can check it out. It's all going to be kind of fabricated works, but definitely some cool, ideas and inspiration to see there. And so as you can see, the stone is really getting, set into place there. As we set those other wires, and we tie them in onto the band, once we finish this design up, then it would really be solid and hold that stone in place. And so I hope this has given you a lot of inspiration and, gives you some ideas on something to try out with your own designs. I'm going to basically spiral these around and weave them and tie that back down, and I'll show you guys that next week. So thanks everyone, and I hope you have a great day.